Have you ever walked into a room and suddenly forgotten why you went there? Or struggled to remember someone's name, even though you met them just a few minutes ago? Yet somehow, a song you haven't heard in 20 years can bring back an entire moment of your childhood. You might remember the smell of your grandmother's kitchen, the sound of a teacher's voice, the first time you fell in love, the day you got your first job. But you can forget what you had for breakfast yesterday. Why? If our brains are constantly recording information, why don't we remember everything? The answer is surprisingly simple. Your brain is not designed to remember everything. It is designed to remember what matters. And understanding that can completely change the way you study, work, communicate, and even understand yourself. In this video, we're going to explore why some memories stay with us for decades, while other information disappears within minutes. We'll look at attention, emotion, repetition, sleep, stress, age, and one of the most important secrets of memory. Forgetting is not always a failure. Sometimes forgetting is exactly what your brain is supposed to do. One of the biggest misunderstandings about memory is that we imagine the brain works like a camera. You see something, your brain records it. Later, you simply replay it. But human memory doesn't work that way. Your brain is constantly receiving enormous amounts of information. Sounds, faces, words, movement, smells, sensations, conversations, background noise, visual details. Your environment contains far more information than your conscious mind can process. Imagine sitting in a busy coffee shop. You may notice the person sitting across from you. You may hear music playing. You may see people walking past the window. But you're probably not consciously remembering every conversation happening around you. You're not memorizing the exact position of every chair. You're not storing every sound from every cup being placed on a table. Your brain filters most of it. And that's a good thing. Because if your brain tried to store everything equally, your mind would be overwhelmed. Instead, your brain asks, in a sense, is this important? If the answer seems to be yes, the information receives more attention. If the answer is no, it may quickly fade. That's why memory begins with something surprisingly basic: attention. You can't remember what you never really noticed. Think about meeting someone at a party. They introduce themselves. Hi, I'm Daniel. You smile. Nice to meet you. 30 seconds later, you're thinking, what was his name again? You may assume your memory is terrible, but perhaps the problem wasn't memory. You simply weren't paying enough attention. While Daniel was telling you his name, maybe you were thinking about what you wanted to say next. Maybe you were distracted by your phone. Maybe you were thinking about another conversation. Your brain heard the sound, but hearing something and deeply processing it are not the same thing. This explains why you can sometimes read an entire page and realize you don't remember anything you just read. Your eyes moved across the words, but your attention wasn't truly there. This is incredibly important for students, professionals, and anyone trying to learn something new. Attention is the doorway to memory. If information doesn't receive enough attention, there's very little for your brain to store in the first place. So if you want to remember more, don't immediately ask, how can I improve my memory? Ask, how deeply am I paying attention? Now think about an emotionally powerful moment in your life. Maybe you remember where you were when you received life-changing news. Maybe you remember your first major success. Maybe you remember an embarrassing moment from school. Maybe you remember the day someone important said something that changed how you saw yourself. Why do these moments remain so vivid? One major reason is emotion. Emotion tells the brain, this matters. When something feels important, exciting, frightening, meaningful, or deeply personal, the brain tends to treat it differently from ordinary information. That's why emotional experiences can become powerful memories. Consider the difference between these two statements. I went to a restaurant last Tuesday, and I went to that restaurant on the night. My best friend told me she was moving to another country. The second experience has emotional meaning. The location becomes connected to a person, a feeling, a conversation, and a significant moment. Now the memory has multiple connections. This is one reason emotional stories are easier to remember than lists of disconnected facts. Our brains are naturally drawn to meaning. Imagine I give you 20 random numbers. You might remember a few. Now imagine those same numbers represent something meaningful. Your birthday, your favorite team's championship score, a phone number you've used for years, an important financial figure. Suddenly, remembering becomes easier. Why? Because information becomes more memorable when it has context. This is one reason storytelling is so powerful. A list of facts can feel disconnected, but put those facts inside a story and suddenly they become part of a sequence. There is a beginning, a problem, a person, a goal, a consequence, and an ending. Your brain can connect these pieces. This principle can be extremely useful when learning. Instead of simply memorizing isolated information, ask, what does this mean? How does this connect to something I already know? Can I explain this as a story? The more connections you create, the easier it can become to retrieve the information later. There's another reason you remember some things for years. You use them repeatedly. Think about riding a bicycle. Once you learn the basic movements, you don't usually need to consciously think about every tiny step. You don't say, now I will balance. Now I will move my right leg. Now I will turn the handlebar. Practice has changed the way your brain handles the skill. The same principle applies to knowledge. If you encounter information once, it may disappear. If you repeatedly retrieve and use that information, the memory becomes easier to access. This is why repetition is powerful. But there's an important distinction. Simply reading something 10 times isn't always the best way to remember it. A more powerful strategy is active recall. Close the book. Put away your notes. Then ask yourself, what did I just learn? Try to explain it without looking. If you struggle, that's useful, because the struggle forces your brain to retrieve the information. And retrieval is part of learning. Here's a common experience among students. An exam is tomorrow. So you spend 5 hours studying. By midnight, you feel like you know everything. You go to sleep. The next morning, you can still remember the material. It feels like cramming worked, but weeks later, a lot of it is gone. Why? Because information that is repeatedly reviewed over longer periods tends to be more deeply reinforced than information consumed in one intense session. This is called spaced practice or spaced repetition. Instead of studying something for 5 hours and one night, you might study it for shorter periods across several days. Day 1, Day 3, Day 7, then again later. Each time you retrieve the information, you're reminding your brain that this knowledge is worth keeping. This is useful far beyond school. If you're learning a language, studying for a professional certification, developing a new skill, or trying to remember important concepts, spacing your practice can be much more effective than one giant study session. Here's something many people underestimate. Sleep is not simply the time when your brain shuts down. Your brain remains active while you sleep, and sleep plays an important role in memory processing. During the day, you collect information. At night, your brain has an opportunity to process and organize some of what you've experienced. That's one reason. Pulling an all-nighter before an important exam isn't necessarily a smart strategy. You may gain extra hours of study, but you also lose valuable sleep. And without adequate rest, attention, learning, and memory can suffer. Think about your brain like a busy office. During the day, new information keeps arriving. At night, the office needs time to organize the files. If you never give it that time, the system becomes less efficient. So if you're trying to remember something important, don't only think about what you do while you're awake. Think about how you sleep. Stress makes memory more complicated. A little stress can sometimes increase alertness, but intense or prolonged stress can interfere with attention and memory. Think about being asked to give an important presentation. You know the material. You practiced it. But the moment you stand in front of the audience, your mind suddenly goes blank. The information hasn't necessarily disappeared. Your brain may simply be struggling to retrieve it under pressure. This is why someone can know something perfectly well in a relaxed environment, but struggle to remember it when they're nervous. The lesson isn't that stress is always bad. The lesson is that your mental state affects how you access information. If you're trying to learn, remember, or perform, creating a calm environment can make a significant difference. Have you ever smelled something and suddenly been transported back to another time? Maybe the smell of fresh bread reminds you of childhood. Maybe a particular perfume reminds you of someone you haven't seen in years. Maybe the smell of rain brings back memories of a specific place. This happens because smell has unusually strong connections with brain systems involved in emotion and memory. A smell doesn't always arrive as a simple piece of information. It can become connected to a whole experience. Suddenly, you're not just remembering a smell, you're remembering a room, a person, a season, a feeling, a moment. It's almost like your brain has opened an old folder, and inside that folder is far more than one piece of information. This is why memory can sometimes feel less like retrieving a fact, and more like stepping into a moment. Here's an interesting paradox. You may remember that you had an amazing vacation. You remember the beach, the weather, the people, the feeling, but you may not remember exactly what you ate on the third day. That's because your brain doesn't necessarily preserve every detail equally. It often preserves the parts that appear meaningful. The overall experience can remain while smaller details disappear. This is also why memories can change over time. Each time you remember something, you're not necessarily playing an untouched recording. You're reconstructing the experience. And reconstruction can introduce changes. You might remember a detail differently years later. You might become more confident about something that was originally uncertain, or you might combine details from different moments. This doesn't mean your memories are fake. It means human memory is reconstructive, not a perfect recording system. Names are a fascinating example. You can recognize someone's face instantly. You know exactly who they are. You remember where you met. You remember what they do. But their name, gone. Why? Because a person's name can be an arbitrary label. The name Michael, for example, doesn't necessarily tell your brain anything about the person. But if you connect the name with something meaningful, remembering may become easier when someone says, "Hi, I'm Michael." Instead of immediately thinking about what you're going to say next, repeat the name mentally. Michael. Then connect it with something. Michael, the architect. Or Michael, the guy I met at the conference. Now the name has a connection. The goal is not to force your brain to memorize a random word. It's to give that word meaning. Modern life gives us a serious challenge. Notifications, emails, messages, social media, news, multiple browser tabs, music, work, conversations. We often believe we're good at multitasking, but much of the time we're actually switching attention rapidly between tasks, and every switch has a cost. Imagine trying to memorize a phone number while checking messages every few seconds. Your attention is constantly being interrupted. The information may never receive enough uninterrupted processing to become a strong memory. This is especially important when studying. If you want to remember something, create periods of focused attention. Put the phone away. Reduce unnecessary notifications. Work on one thing. Give your brain a chance to process deeply. Sometimes the best memory improvement technique isn't another app or another productivity system. It's simply pay attention to one thing at a time. Have you ever listened to someone explain something and felt your mind drifting away? 5 minutes later, you realize you heard the words but absorbed almost nothing. That's because attention is influenced by interest. When something feels relevant, surprising, useful, or emotionally meaningful, your brain has more reason to focus on it. So if you're learning something boring, don't simply force yourself to stare at it for hours. Try connecting it to something you care about. Ask, how can I use this? Why does this matter? Where would this appear in real life? Can I teach it to someone else? You can transform information from an abstract fact into something personally relevant, and relevance can make information easier to remember. Here's one of the most practical memory techniques you can use. Try teaching what you just learned. Imagine you have studied a complicated concept. Instead of reading it again and again, pretend you're explaining it to a 12-year-old. Use simple language. Avoid unnecessary jargon. Give examples. Explain why it matters. When you teach, you're forced to organize your understanding, and when you discover that you can't explain something clearly, you've found a gap in your knowledge. That gap tells you exactly what to study next. You don't need a classroom. You can explain the concept aloud to yourself. You can write it down. You can teach a friend. You can even imagine you're making a video about it. The important part is retrieval and explanation. Why forgetting can actually be useful. Now we reach one of the most surprising ideas. Forgetting is not always the enemy of learning. Imagine remembering every single detail of your life with perfect clarity. Every conversation, every advertisement, every street sign, every random thought, every sound, every face, every mistake, every insignificant moment. Would that be helpful? Probably not. Your brain needs to prioritize. Forgetting removes information that may no longer be useful. In that sense, forgetting can help keep your mental system manageable. The problem isn't forgetting everything. The goal is to remember the things that matter. So instead of feeling frustrated every time you forget something, ask, was this information actually important? If not, forgetting may simply be your brain doing its job. So how can you improve your memory in everyday life? Start with a few simple principles. First, pay attention. You can't build a strong memory from information you barely noticed. Second, create meaning. Connect new information to something you already understand. Third, use emotion and stories. Information connected to meaningful experiences tends to be easier to remember. Fourth, practice retrieval. Don't just reread. Close the material and try to recall it. Fifth, use spaced repetition. Review important information over time rather than trying to absorb everything at once. Sixth, protect your sleep. Your brain needs recovery and processing time. Seventh, reduce distractions. Deep attention creates better conditions for learning. And finally, use what you learn. Knowledge becomes more durable when you repeatedly apply it. You can try an experiment today. Take 10 random words. Look at them for 30 seconds. Then hide the list. Write down as many as you can remember. Tomorrow, do it again. But this time, create a story connecting all 10 words. For example, imagine a dog wearing sunglasses. The dog jumps onto a bicycle. The bicycle crashes into a giant cake. The cake falls into a swimming pool. A man wearing a yellow hat jumps in after it. Suddenly, you have a bizarre story. And bizarre stories can be memorable because they create connections, imagery, and emotion. The lesson isn't that your brain needs ridiculous stories. The lesson is that connected information is easier to work with than isolated information. Your brain likes relationships. There's something deeper about memory that goes beyond studying. Your memories help construct your sense of who you are. You remember things that happened to you. Those memories influence what you believe about yourself. If you repeatedly remember moments when you succeeded, you may begin to see yourself as capable. If you constantly focus on moments when you failed, you may begin to define yourself through those failures. But remember, memory is not a perfect recording. Your interpretation of the past can change. The same event can look different when you're 20 than when you're 40. You may understand an old failure differently. You may realize that rejection protected you from something. You may discover that an embarrassing experience taught you confidence. You may recognize that a difficult period made you stronger. The past doesn't change, but your relationship with the past can change, and that matters. So why do we remember some things and forget others? Because memory is selective. We tend to remember what receives attention, what carries emotion, what has meaning. what connects to existing knowledge, what we repeatedly retrieve, what we use, and what our brains consider important. Meanwhile, information that receives little attention, has little meaning, and is rarely used may gradually fade. This isn't necessarily a flaw. It's part of how the brain manages an incredibly complicated world. Your brain is constantly making decisions about what deserves space, and perhaps that gives us a useful lesson for everyday life. We often spend enormous amounts of energy trying to remember more, but maybe the better question is, what deserves to be remembered? Remember the people who matter. Remember the lessons that made you wiser. Remember the mistakes that taught you something. Remember the moments that made you grateful. Remember the knowledge that helps you grow. And don't feel guilty about forgetting every insignificant detail. You were never meant to remember everything. You were meant to make meaning from your experiences. The next time you forget someone's name, don't immediately tell yourself that your memory is terrible. The next time you forget what you read yesterday, don't assume you're incapable of learning. And the next time an old song, smell, photograph, or place suddenly brings back a forgotten moment, remember what that experience is showing you. Your brain isn't a hard drive. It's a living system that constantly filters, connects, strengthens, weakens, and reconstructs information. It doesn't simply ask, "What happened?" In many ways, it is constantly asking, "What matters?" And perhaps that's the most beautiful thing about human memory. We don't carry every moment equally. We carry pieces, a voice, a face, a lesson, a feeling, a place, a story. And somehow those pieces become part of who we are. So don't focus only on remembering more, focus on paying attention to the moments worth remembering. Because years from now, you may not remember everything you saw today, but the things you truly noticed, deeply felt, repeatedly practiced, and meaningfully experienced may stay with you for the rest of your life.